Greetings and welcome to .ComSports. Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of .ComSports. As always, I'm your host Kwame Fisher-Jones, and joining us through this journey of unparalleled, unyielding, and unapologetic sports diatribe is...
My name is Duck Martin.
Jordan Gant, Sideline Haters.
Roy Burton, Liberty Ballers.
And Duck, who you with?
I'm with Sideline Haters as well, sorry.
It's all right. And every week we're here to bring you the .comers, netters, and anybody else on the internet who's got a sports opinion and the heart to come and join me. So today we are going to open up with the big Philadelphia sports news. Doug Collins has decided to, and I'm going to lean to you because you were ready to run him out of town 2 weeks ago.
My job is done.
Doug Collins, okay, well no, that's the question. Is your job done? Who or whom should be following Doug Collins out the door?
Like we've talked about before, I don't think Doug Collins is the sole reason for the issues with the Sixers. You're exactly right when we've had discussions. There are plenty of other people in that front office who need to go as well. You need to really clean that front office from top to bottom, starting with whoever makes the decisions in the general manager's office, down to whoever's making the decisions in the scouting department on that team.
Well, we know names. I mean, you won't say names. I said Tony DeLeo. We'll start there. Okay. Rod Thorne, the man who said Michael Jordan.
Rod Thorne, yes.
Well, consult with anybody. Put it this way: rather than name names, we'll do this. Anybody that's been a Sixers employee for more than 2 years should be exit stage left, and that's it. Now, you wanted Doug Collins. To me, it was inconsequential. I felt like Phil Jackson could walk through that door, and Phil Jackson wasn't going to fix anything. So, from the outside looking in, as non-Philly residents, Doug, I'm going to start with you. Do you place this on Doug Collins, or do you also think people should be following him out the door?
I absolutely don't place it on him because personally, as a fan, when he was a broadcaster, I got tired of him midway through the third quarter. So I can imagine that the team was tired of listening to him. So, but at the same time, it's not his fault because, like you said, even with Phil Jackson coaching that team, you weren't going to get Andrew Bynum healthy. And at the time when they made that move, from the outside looking in, I was like, dang, that looks like a good move. It looks like they just stole one of the elite big men in the league, but as with 7-footers go, you just don't know if they're going to stay healthy.
It's a good move until you bring in, and it's like beating a dead horse, but it's a horse that needs to be beaten. It's a good move until you counter with Kwame Brown and Nick Young and Darrell Wright when you had better players available.
Right.
You know, and John, let me give you a second to chime in. To me, I looked at it, and I've done several shows and talked about it. Bynum was a great piece, but he didn't complete the puzzle. And they screwed up getting the puzzle done. They found a piece to put in the middle or the corner, however you put a puzzle together. They found a piece to put there, but they couldn't find anything else. And, you know, it just seems like Doug Collins is a scapegoat. Am I right there?
I would say he is the scapegoat in this. If you look at last season's team, they put together some magic. And Doug Collins was a motivational force behind that magic. He does have a voice that Duck may get tired of hearing every now and then, but some of the young players did follow that until maybe the second round of the playoffs last year. Now, Rod Thorne making moves to bring in Andrew Bynum, of course you would do that. Anybody would do that. But to sacrifice Andre Iguodala, I think was a bad move. Now, being that we're in the D.C. area, Nick Young, we knew wasn't going to work out. We knew Kwame Brown wasn't going to work out. That was NBA fact, right?
Yeah.
So you went and got the premier big man in the league other than Dwight Howard, who never played a game for you this season. Sometimes it happens. We see what happened to Greg Oden. We've seen what happened to other 7-footers. But the AI situation, Andre Iguodala situation, I think was kind of an ill move, and that steamrolled the whole thing going on.
Especially when you consider that Denver's rolling.
Yes.
Right. Tina Turner rolling right now. All right, so I'm going to bring it back to you, Roy. Collins is gone. You cannot place blame on him any longer.
Okay.
I don't want another veteran. I don't want like a Nate McMillan. I want a fresh face. So, but before, honestly, you got to change the driver before you can change the car. So, but we all agree that the GMs have to go. You know, I know you don't agree with them three in there. We all agree the GMs have to go. I wrote down some names here, but the one that really stood out to me, and I want to get your opinion here. Bill Laimbeer. Okay. Would you accept him as a Sixers head coach?
Would I accept him, based on the history that he has with the Sixers or against the Sixers? Is that the reason why I wouldn't? If I think he's a good, I'm not a big Laimbeer as a coach fan.
Okay.
I'd prefer I know you don't like veterans. I would prefer a veteran name out there, someone that these guys would respect.
Who would you prefer?
I'll throw Stan Van Gundy out there.
I like Stan Van, but the only thing is, you need to have someone who's done it teach you how to do it, and we don't have a star. Okay. We don't have a team full of stars. Correct. So bringing in a Van Gundy who's great at coaching stars doesn't help us. And a star is a self-motivator. A star is a guy who can get it done by himself. You want a guy that's never had it but still managed to do it, and that's why I said Bill Laimbeer. Unathletic, goofy. I mean, forget the fact that, you know what I mean, he was a pain in the ass. I mean, this was a guy who managed to put it together, double-digit rebounds, played on a team that was full of non-stars outside of Isaiah Thomas. I took you.
But Stan Van Gundy took the Magic to the finals. Got a raw deal in Miami. Would have took them to the finals in 2006. I mean, look. I mean, he has a pedigree. He has a track record. When he walks into this door, Evan Turner, Thaddeus Young, Drew Holiday, all the key guys on your team going forward will instantly respect Stan Van Gundy.
But he's permanently disgruntled. He's like Eeyore. I don't. You're not just changing.
Greg Popovich is a happy guy.
Yes. Greg Popovich is a very.
Everybody's happy with Tim Duncan. Right.
Well, it's a great point. And what do you think about Stan Van? I was going to throw it to you anyway. What do you think?
Like Stan Van, Patrick Ewing. Give Pat a chance.
No.
Give Pat a chance.
I told you last week. There's always room for no. No.
Either
why?
Pat Ewing, because he deserves it.
What?
If you look at,
all right, go ahead.
If you're going to talk about Stan Van, Pat Ewing sat beside him for years with Dwight Howard. Give the man a chance. If not Pat Ewing, I like Nate McMillan. We saw what Nate did with the same kind of quality team that Portland had years ago. Mm-hmm. I think he can do the same thing here in Philly.
Go ahead.
All right. Whoever the coach is going to be is not going to be the coach when this team becomes a finished product.
I disagree, but go ahead.
All right. Well, the team that was here last year is completely blown up. They look like a perennial lottery team for at least 2 or 3 more years. So it seems like in typical NBA fashion, the guy who's with you when you're really bad isn't the guy who's there once you're finally making the playoffs.
It's like a Stepford coach.
But as far as Bill Laimbeer, not only does he have the track record as a player, but he does have a track record as a coach.
Exactly.
Even though he was only coaching in the WNBA, people might discount that, but he had a lot of success.
What do you do with only the WNBA?
I'm saying other people might say that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying other people might say that.
Like Jarman Gant. He may say that.
Yeah, we know you don't like, but I guarantee this. Name a woman ball player, I guarantee they cross you over. I guarantee they cross you over.
And I would fall and stay there.
Skylar Diggins would give it to you. All right. I agree with Doug, obviously, because I gave you Bill Laimbeer. I don't want another retread, and here's why. You're starting new. Start new. You don't want, it's like anything in life. When you break up a relationship, you want to start with a new person. If you break up with your girlfriend, you want to make sure the next girl that comes in is not someone that works for the same company, wears the same clothes, wears the same cologne, drives the same car. You want something new, something to get you motivated. Also, we have a young team. The core of the team is Thaddeus Young and Drew Holiday. I think you would agree with me there. They're not great players. We disagree on how much you think that Thaddeus Young is overpaid. I think he's underpaid. So, very rarely do you have a star that you believe is underpaid. I don't think you bring in an NBA coach who's used to working with stars. I think you bring someone in who has no experience, doesn't know what the precedent is. Possibly someone that works in the WNBA. Mario Elie, and Mario Ellie's another name I want to throw out with you guys, and I wrote it so I should know it. Brian Shaw. I'm going to come back with you. What say you on either one of those?
Brian Shaw, I would support. I think Brian Shaw deserves a chance. He deserves the same chance as Patrick Ewing, though.
All right, that's all right. No.
Same exact guy. Same exact track record other than Brian Shaw learned under Phil Jackson.
Well, here's where it kind of differs a little bit. Brian Shaw's got them things.
Right.
He got, not ring, them things. Patrick Ewing's got these, that's it.
Blame Michael Jordan.
I'm not blaming anybody.
I'm not asking him to coach the team.
Okay. I'm not blaming.
And he has the same issue with Charles Barkley had, Hakeem Olajuwon would have had if Mike wouldn't have retired. And
excuses.
This
is Patrick Ewing's agent.
I see, and
all I'm saying is give Pat a chance.
I have an analogy for people with excuses. I always say you have more excuses than a virgin on prom night, and in the end, you walk away mad because you don't get it done. I don't want to hear Patrick. I don't see what Patrick Ewing's got more excuses than said virgin. But at the end of the day, he doesn't get it done. I mean, he missed that layup against the Pacers.
He did.
He sat sideline while Dwight Howard had no offensive game to talk about other than a dunk. I mean, come on, man.
We're talking about Dwight Howard here.
Okay.
He's impervious to learning post.
No, he's not.
I'm talking about a person who didn't want
This conversation is completely taken a different way.
help. When LeBron James went and sought Hakeem Olajuwon for some outside help, you mean to tell me Dwight Howard couldn't?
No, because he had Patrick Ewing. Stan Van Gundy told him, no, we got Patrick Ewing, he can do it. Ignore the champion.
Kwame Brown, your boy had Patrick Ewing too.
Exactly.
Didn't learn a thing.
I'm telling you right now, his resume gets worse and worse and worse. So, all right. Let me throw it to you, then I'm going to throw it to you, Doug. Mario Ellie.
Well, let me transition back to Brian Shaw. I'm going to bring in Brian Shaw again. You have to bring in somebody these guys are going to respect. And like you said, Brian Shaw's got those things. And then
those man.
Look, Doug Collins coached Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Grant Hill. And at the end of last year, there was almost a mutiny on this team because these guys got tired of him texting them at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, you have to bring in somebody that these guys are going to listen to for 82 games.
The Sixers suck on something. It's like, I mean, you're mad at your coaches. I want somebody to want it as bad as me. Like, we all are entrepreneurs no matter what you do. You know, the great Hove line, we're all businessmen at the end of the day. We're not a businessman, we're a businessman. And it's like you want somebody that wants it as bad as you. Right. So to say, he's bothering me because he texts me at 3 o'clock in the morning. Dude, you should be up looking at film.
Yes.
Kobe's getting ready to go to the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's Evan Turner that said that, I bet. Go ahead, Doc.
And as far as Brian Shaw, though, I don't understand how this guy doesn't have a head coaching job yet. I mean, working underneath Phil Jackson, he was supposed to be in line for the Lakers job, and then they overthought everything. And they ended up in the situation where they got enamored by guys who had former coaching experience, and this guy can't get a shot. So, I like the names that you brought up, and as far as like getting a retread, that's just the same track that every NBA team, they'd rather go safe than take a chance. And by going safe, you're setting the ceiling for what you can do very low.
I think, and we're going to move on to a second, we're going to transition a second. I think the overall factor is this. In order to be great, you have to take a leap of faith. You know, you look at Jerry Krause firing Doug Collins and going with a hippie who smoked weed. You know what I mean? And Phil Jackson. Now, at the time, he was a guy that drove a shaggy bus in the CBA. You know what I mean? Had no pedigree at all. Larry Brown wouldn't hire him when he was with the Nets. And look what he's done. You know, I'll go before that. I'll go to Jerry Buss firing Westhead and going with the Pat Riley. Bring him out of the announcing booth. You have to have an inclination, if I said that correctly, to get things. He threw me off when he was talking about Patrick Ewing. You know, you have to want to take that chance, that leap of faith, in order to go the distance.
But there's not that many Eric Spoelstras in the world. Eric Spoelstra is probably the last one.
No, I disagree. I'll give you a second. I disagree. Eric Spoelstra was a man's man. You know where he started at?
In the film room.
Before that, he was an intern. His daddy was a coach. So, you know, it's easy to say that, but who stuck with him when they were 9 and 8? Pat Riley. Conversely, Jim Buss bails on Mike Brown, who was the last man to be on a team to have, 2 7-footers win a title when he was with the Spurs. So, you know, you bring in D'Antoni. Well, we'll save that whole segment. But just to go back to what you're saying, because I want to take a break. Go back to what you're saying. It's not always an exposure, no. But there's always someone of that ilk. And sometimes they're guys whose pedigree starts with an Adolph Rupp, you know what I mean, and Pat Riley, who had no business being on that team. But for some reason, greatness has followed him, losing to Texas Western, then going to the Lakers and being a part of, a 33-game winning streak on that team, then going to a booth with Chick Hearn, you know what I mean, and then taking a chance with Jerry Buss. So you have to take those leap of faiths, and they never, ever involve Patrick Ewing. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Coming back, we're going to, you know what? We're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more NBA. We're going to jump into Kobe. And I want to get these guys' sentiments on Kobe's injury and where do we go from here. .com/sports. Welcome back to .com/sports. Now, before we left, we were infiltrated with Patrick Ewing nonsense. Now that we're back, Kobe Bryant. Now, before I ask a question, I just want to lay some things out here. Kobe Bryant was injured on a Friday night. That Wednesday, Kobe played 48 minutes against the Portland Trailblazers. I'm going to repeat that. 48 minutes against the Portland Trailblazers. This was not the Detroit Pistons. This was not Chicago Bulls. It's the Portland Trailblazers. All right. Prior to that, there had been reports that somebody in the Lakers or some people in the Lakers organization that tried to reel Kobe's minutes in, and he told them, kick rocks, I'm not coming out of the game. That, to me, was his old adage, real recognizes real. Kobe looked at Mike D'Antoni, and he did not look familiar. So he did not want to entrust his playoff chances with Mike D'Antoni. Finally, the last thing that really, really struck a chord out to me is the Achilles injury is not a fatigue injury. It is not an injury that you can avoid because you're in tip-top shape. It's an injury that can basically happen at any time. However, the minutes he had been logging, the time he had played on the court, makes me wonder, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to ask you a simple question. Do you blame Mike D'Antoni for what happened? I'm going to start with Jay.
No.
Okay.
There's no way you can really blame D'Antoni for this. If you look at what that Lakers team has, your second best player is Dwight Howard, who's been non-existent all year. Paul Gasol can barely get off the bench. You have Steve.
Why is that, though?
God, if I know.
God, if you know. God is there. D'Antoni's the reason why Gasol couldn't get off the bench.
And God is saying, why aren't you putting him on the floor either? It's just a relationship issue, I believe, with Paul Gasol and D'Antoni, and it's just not working well. And you think it would with D'Antoni with the overseas experience. So I'm really not sure about that.
Okay.
But then when you look at Steve Nash being hurt, there is no one on the Lakers squad who can possibly carry them to a victory. God knows how they won that game the other day against the Spurs. Kobe had to will that team into the playoffs. They're fighting against the Utah Jazz for that last spot. He was going to play every minute he possibly could to make sure they got in the playoffs.
I'm going to give you a second, Doug. I'm going to give you a second. Just let me, I got to jump at this a second thing. There's a couple of things I have with that, problems I have with that. You mentioned Steve Nash. Who was covering Steve Nash's man for the last, 20-plus games?
Kobe Bryant.
Okay. Why was he covering Steve Nash's man?
Because Steve Nash is old.
Because D'Antoni didn't have the heart to pull Steve Nash out of the game. At some point, you have to be a coach. A coach is supposed to be a leader of men because he is the lead man. He's not a boy. He's not a chump. Phil Jackson tells Kobe to sit his behind down. Kobe sits down. Now, I think at some point, we have given D'Antoni excuse. He's a great coach. He's a great coach. He's a great coach. That's all we keep hearing. I don't see anything to agree with that notion.
I've never called this man a great coach here. If you look at those Phoenix Suns team he had that I would say really overachieved, I'm not going to put any of that on D'Antoni. I'll put that on the legs of Steve Nash and the legs of Amari Stoudemire.
Okay.
If you look at the New York Knicks team that failed, I blame Mike D'Antoni for that. D'Antoni technically is a figurehead, and there's more politics, and you'll probably know this, about why Phil Jackson didn't come back, why Mike Brown did get fired, why you're looking at the gentleman you mentioned earlier who didn't get hired by
Brian Shaw.
Brian Shaw, that didn't get the job that he really deserved. But I'm not going to blame it there on D'Antoni with that roster.
No, go ahead, Chama.
As far as like where the blame gets put, it's D'Antoni's fault, but D'Antoni can't hire himself. He should never have had that job in the first place. Like you said, he is not a great coach. He's barely a decent coach because he caught lightning in a bottle with a very good roster in Phoenix, and he is still writing checks on what that team did.
Yeah.
That basically he just rolled the ball out there and said, shoot as fast as you can. Like that was his coaching, was don't play that much D and shoot in under 5 seconds.
Doug Moe.
I can run that offense too from the sidelines. And yet he got ran out of New York, and New York played better instantly the second he was gone. So you bring him into LA, and the whole team has been in turmoil since he stepped foot in there. And
no leadership.
The fact that Powell is upset. He somewhat sulked in the playoffs last year, and there were rumors as to why that was. But he has been visibly unhappy. And this is a team that was put together. You mentioned puzzle pieces earlier. Mm-hmm. You have pieces from different puzzles.
Yeah.
There's like a block, there's a crayon, like all sorts of children's toys, but none of the puzzle pieces from the box are there. And it's just something that wasn't going to work in the first place. So it's his fault, but he should have never been there in the first place.
So you're blaming Jim Bustin?
Yeah. I'm blaming whoever. Yeah, exactly. Dr. Bus is
There's no blame to go. Like you said when you started out the segment, the Achilles injury is not a stress injury. It's not an injury that that's going to happen after playing 40. He was averaging 42 minutes a night for like 5 or 6 games. We know
for the month.
In this town for a month. We know in this town we're very familiar with Achilles injuries because Jason Peters, our offensive tackle, injured his Achilles working out before the season, and then he injured it again when he fell off his rollabout when he was trying to get back a few months later. So it's not, it's not one of those injuries that just happens when you're working out working out and grinding. It just happens. So I can't blame D'Antoni. I can't blame Kobe for wanting to go out there and play 40 minutes. It's just one of those freak injuries.
All right. Now, I figured two of you would not go with blaming D'Antoni. Now, as I was prepared, you ever see the movie Bronx Tale? All of life's mysteries can be solved within movies, women, and food. In the movie Bronx Tale, there's a guy, bad luck guy. No matter what he put his number on, everybody backed out because it was guaranteed he was going to lose. Remember that?
Cooler.
Now, Mike D'Antoni is that bad luck guy. No matter where he goes, you mentioned Phoenix. Nobody remembers this. There's a little place in Denver where he started. And they were abysmal when he was the coach of the Denver Nuggets. Horrible. He gets Steve Nash in a horrible. The Clippers made it to the second round those years. I mean, the NBA was on a downtrodden at that point. Steve Nash is a back-to-back MVP, the only back-to-back MVP to have never played in an NBA Finals game. I don't want to say he got lucky, but he met the perfect opportunity and he was prepared to move out of the way. Now he's forced to coach, and this is what we see. There's no reason why game 46, Kobe Bryant is playing 30-plus minutes. None.
Right.
Now, you can tell me, I can tell you, tires can blow at any time. But they're more likely to blow when there's more wear on the tread, when you're constantly putting more wear and tear on them. Tim Duncan plays nowhere near those minutes. Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce plays nowhere near those minutes.
None of the Miami Heat do.
Great point. The phenom that is LeBron James plays nowhere near those minutes.
He's not even 30 and he's not playing those minutes.
At some point, you mentioned Jim Buss. I understand that. When you look through how D'Antoni got there, I understand Jim Buss's philosophy. He comes in, daddy was a player, daddy handled everything. I want to make my own niche. Brian Shaw was no guaranteed home run. As much as people want to say, it was no guaranteed home run. Mike Brown, you needed a guy that was not an LA guy because that was not an LA team. So you needed a guy that had experience. They had no idea they were going to get Dwight Howard. Opportunity presents itself to get Dwight Howard. They have the second best center. We're the Lakers. We go for number one. So they get Dwight Howard. They brought in Steve Nash to speed up the offense to keep up with the Oklahoma City Thunders, not to stop them, because they had nobody who was capable of stopping Westbrook. Scouts know from top to bottom that Westbrook is relentless. He's going to keep playing. So they needed somebody who could keep guns firing rather than try to block the guns. So I understand that philosophy. Bringing in D'Antoni was the last minute because there's some stories about why Phil Jackson wound up there. If you don't bring in D'Antoni, you don't have anybody else to bring in. You're coming with Bernie Bickerstaff, so you can't do that. At some point, and I'm going to bring it back to you because you said no, and I'm going to bring it back to you as well. At some point, you guys have to look at that. Look at the fact that D'Antoni was a guy who constantly allowed the Kobe Bryant to run over him. And if he steps up and just pulls him back, now we're looking at a Lakers team that beats the Spurs in the first round. So, they still have a chance if they had a better coach. Does any of that sway you?
If they had a better coach, yes, but the bulldog known as Kobe Bryant was not going to sit down. The only person who could tame him was Phil Jackson. Any other coach you could put on that bench, Kobe Bryant was the coach of that
Then we
team.
beef. Then we fight because you're not going to run over me. We talked about this last week with Doug Collins. Go ahead, everyone.
No, you take Kobe Bryant out the game, that team is terrible. You got Jody Meeks, you have
Coach!
Right.
But you also have Paul Gasol, Antoine Jameson, and Dwight Howard, and Ron Artest. Metta World Peace.
You've seen what Paul Gasol and Antoine Jameson have done at times this year. You would not be in the playoff race right now. You would not be leading the Jazz right now in the playoffs if you pull Kobe Bryant and made him play 36 minutes a night.
When they still had Bernie Bickerstaff, I was saying it as a joke, but looking back on it, it should have been serious. Make Kobe the player coach because he was basically. He was going to command the most amount of respect on that sideline, regardless.
And if you blame anybody, blame Dwight Howard. Blame Dwight Howard. Yes, I blame Dwight Howard. He has been non-existent this whole season.
So he's averaging a double-double
If he'd have been
with a bad back.
If he'd have been the number 2 guy that he's supposed to be, Kobe wouldn't have to play those minutes.
Jay, in full disclosure, Jay is a host of Sideline Haters, and apparently he thinks that he has to find someone to hate on in every segment or bring something preposterous to the segment. Last segment was Patrick Ewing, who was coached by Dwight Howard. Now it's Dwight Howard's fault. You serious with this?
Honestly, if he would have stepped up throughout the season like he was really supposed to do, he's always been a number 2. He was a number 2 when he was the number 1 in Orlando. He was a number 2 to Hedo Turkoglu. How did he do that?
Chill.
Yes,
Jay,
he
that's
was.
so disrespectful.
In the finals, he was
I didn't mean to say that. I'm not trying to steal your light, Stephen. I apologize. That's so uncalled for, though.
But it's true. But it's true. He is not the guy that we think he is. And if he'd have played up to the potential that he could have, Kobe wouldn't have to play those minutes.
He already got his back replaced like an hour ago.
Right.
Yeah. So sit down.
But at the same
He
time,
gave you a double. I'm sorry. He's giving you a double-double. When is a double-double? 16 and 10 not good enough?
Right now for the Lakers, it's not.
It's not good enough when you can average 24 and 30.
Go ahead, Doc. Hold on. Let Duck it in.
and it's not good enough when you bring in a 40-year-old to run a high-paced, fast-paced offense. I mean, that like the whole thing doesn't fit together.
It's it's to me. I laugh because when you say that you bring a 40-year-old, you bring in a 40-year-old with a bad back.
Right.
A 40-year-old who couldn't play defense when he was healthy.
Wouldn't.
It's like, and you call out Dwight. Go ahead, Roy.
No, I'm just saying, like if Dwight Howard's the best center in the NBA, 16 and 10 is not good enough when you're supposed to average 23 and 13, or you're supposed to be a dominant post player. Now, all of a sudden, with Kobe down, now Dwight's saying, "Oh, I'll put this team on my back, even though my back hurts. I'll put this team on my back."
80 games later.
It's really good now that you've decided to do this in mid-April. When you could have did this in
80 games later.
I don't know, mid-December,
November, December, January, maybe. Now it's time that Kobe's sitting down. He has the most leverage in the NBA right now, Dwight Howard.
It's the fierce urgency of now. DC knows about that. All right, I need a breather. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk Brittany. I want to talk a WNBA player going to the NBA. I'm a little offended by this. ComSports. Welcome back to ComSports. Now, I don't even know if I want to go this direction with you because you hit me with two. I'm not going to start. I'm going to start with Duck.
All right.
All right. Brittany, it's Griner, right? I keep calling her Griner. One of the best basketball players I've seen in some time. Mark Cuban says he would draft her in the second round. Now, before I give you a comment, I want to state something. I felt that is disrespect. I feel that it's unfair to have the WNBA compared to the NBA. I feel that the WNBA is the highest level of female basketball, and that's where the best player in female basketball should go. You should not taint the WNBA and say, well, they're good, but if you really want to play, you should be a second-round pick in the NBA. I didn't like that. Were you at all disturbed by that? And the bigger question is, does she have any business even trying for the NBA?
I don't think she does, because there hasn't been any female basketball player that's shown to even be close to that level. But if I was a Mavericks fan, I'd be especially mad.
Yeah.
Because it just shows that my owner is more of a carnival barker, willing to do a publicity stunt than to actually unearth a gem in the second round.
Yeah.
And there are players that have been found in the second round. The other team from Texas, the Spurs, does it
Have a
all.
few, yeah.
They do it all the time. And meanwhile, you're saying you're just going to throw away our second round pick on something so that you could tie it into some show that you do, or a reality show or something. I mean, it just shows that he's more of an attention-seeking, like now D-list celebrity than he is of like a real NBA owner, where he should just step out of the way and hire basketball people to run the franchise.
That's a great point. I didn't take it that way. That's a great point. You're going to throw away a second-round pick when somebody who's physically not capable. And she, I want to say this, and I'll make sure that she has a right to try wherever she wants. She's earned that right. She's a phenomenal basketball player. But I think to put the invitation out there, she's a basketball player, not a five-legged horse. You know what I mean? Not some sort of monkey that can dance and sing all at once. She's a basketball player. I'm moving away from you because I know what you're gonna say. So I'm gonna give it to you.
Patrick Ewing, coach her up.
Exactly. It's Dwight Howard's fault that she can't play in the NBA.
Did you see an offense there, and do you think she should try out in the NBA?
Again, just to echo your point, I think she has the right to try out. I think she, if she, went to camp or went to summer league or whatever, and by some miracle made the roster or whatever, then that's fine. But again, she's not a sideshow. She's not a bonus. She's not a come out and see Brittany Griner kind of thing. That's not fair to her. It's not fair to the sport. It's not fair to guys, second-round guys who have a legitimate chance or a legitimate shot at the NBA. Like, guys, Isaiah Thomas from the Sacramento Kings.
Carlos Boozer.
The 60th pick in the draft last year is going to be a fantastic point guard for the next 10 years. that's the type of guy that you could potentially miss out on because, you want something, some nice shiny toy that you can play with in Summer League when you go back to Shark Tank. I mean, this is,
That's the show, Shark Tank.
Give a nice little plug for him. We appreciate the check.
Shut the check.
All right. The floor is yours, Jay.
Brace yourself. I agree with you. It was disrespectful to Brittany to even give her that invitation. Granted, it gave her a little bit more exposure as if she really needs more exposure.
Yeah.
But it was disrespectful to the WNBA, first of all.
Exactly.
These ladies, like you said, that's the top level of female basketball in the world right now. Granted, it's not as well respected in the States as it should be, but this is their league. Let them have their league. I remember the WNBA when it first really rolled out. It was a great league. That's where the women want to play at, so they don't have to leave their families, so they can have grassroots here.
The children can see them play.
The children can see them play. Their families can see them play, and it's more convenient. 6'8's a dime a dozen of the NBA. And granted, Brittany Griner is a great women's basketball player. She's not a man. Let her play with the women. Let her dominate the women's game like I think she's going to do. But let the NBA players play with the men. Let the WNBA players play with the women.
And I want to piggyback on a point that you made. The NBA is still a fairly young professional sport. It's 60-some years old compared to the other professional sports that are in their hundreds. When they first started out, they weren't, everybody's favorite. Nobody was running to the gates to see Elgin Baylor in Minneapolis. You know what I mean? And when the Lakers first went to LA, nobody was running to get see Elgin Baylor and Jerry West. It takes time to build that up. The WNBA is still a fairly new league. Give it time. I think this class will do some things for their attendance. You got Skylar Diggins, Elena in in Delaware. But you got some great players. She's one of the best scorers to come out. And you said female player. I want to say this about Brittany. I'll give you a second. I want to say this about Brittany. I've watched a lot of basketball. And when people ask me some of the top players I see, one of the names I always throw out, top players I've ever seen, one of the names I always throw out there is Lisa Leslie. People go, what? Lisa Leslie? Larry Bird, Dr. J, all those players I saw play. If you appreciate the game, and I know it sounds cliche, but if you appreciate the game and watch the footwork that Brittany uses, watch the way she sets her man up. Yeah, she does dunk, but it's not always about flash. Sometimes you watch the technician, the way she approaches the game from a technique point of view, you appreciate it. So I want to say she's a great basketball player, not just a great female basketball player. Go ahead, Doug.
And she has a chance to put fans in the stands in the WNBA because if you look back on the history of any sports league, there was usually someone who came in and dominated the competition, whether it was Babe Ruth, George Mikan, Wilt Chamberlain, Jim Brown. In different sports, when you have some person coming in and just slaying the competition, people want to watch that.
Yeah.
And she could do that for the WNBA. I would be immensely more curious to go watch a WNBA game where I could potentially see someone put up 40 and 20, than just an average game. Yeah, and catch a few dunks and just to watch someone on that level dominate the competition, it generates interest.
And the face of the league is more than likely going to be Skylar Diggins. There's a chance she'll go to New York. I'm not going to say. Yeah. She's going to throw me off. She's probably going to be the face of the league, but Grainer is one of those once in a lifetime. And Skylar is Brittany's one of those once in a lifetime talents, so it's going to be exciting. Go ahead, Jay. Last word.
Keep on talking about the WNBA. The young lady who went to Tennessee a couple of years ago who's playing right now, who really took the league by storm. I forgot her name.
Candace Parker.
The young lady who went to UConn a couple of years ago who's taking the league by storm right now.
Yeah, you got Taurasi but you got the other one. You got Maya. Yeah. Maya Moore.
The female game is getting more and more competitive. These young ladies are coming out. They're very young. They're very athletic. The game has gotten a lot better in the past 5 years, and no one's really giving it credit for it. And Brittany Griner is going to take it to the next level.
I think her along with Elena, and I think Skylar are going to help it really plateau. And I didn't think that he kind of tainted. I know that wasn't Cuban's intent, but it's like you walk in and you say, you pat a woman on the head and say, "Good job, Cupcake." Right. You know what I mean? You don't mean the intent was no malice intent, but it's lack of respect. All right, we're going to transition real quick to the NFL. Chip Kelly, Tuesday. It's go time.
Go time.
What are you looking to see?
You know what? This is the first time we're going to see these guys in these up-tempo Chip Kelly practices.
You think it's going to be up? So you want to see up-tempo?
I want to see up-tempo. I want to see Chip Kelly put his stamp, put his mark on this team. He's already basically reshaped this team well, this defense at least, to a 34. The offense the offense is going to be, apparently it's going to be in a lab, cooking up some marvelous plays for Deshaun Jackson to be the next, D'Anthony Thomas or whatever have you. So I want to see the offense, I want to see these guys work on these things in the next couple of weeks. I want to see these guys come out of the NovaCare complex and say, you know what, we're ready to go.
So that's what you're looking. So you're looking for confidence and speed. Okay. Now you got.
I am a Skins fan. Full disclosure.
All right. So what are you guys looking or expecting to see over here in Philly?
I'm glad to see a 3-4. I'm glad to see a 3-4 because I'm looking forward to Robert Griffin III when he comes back healthy, tearing this 3-4.
Really?
I'm looking forward to Alfred Morris running through this 3-4. A 3-4 takes time to mold. Look at Washington. They struggled with that 3-4 for a while.
We're not using Washington to gauge any
But
success.
still, when you try to implement a new defense or a defense that was already struggling last year, I just don't see that being successful. I'll give him all the credit in the world. It's a brave step. It's a bold step. And it's a step he probably has to do to try to shake things up. But I don't see the Chip Kelly system being overly successful in the first year. I wish him well. I want to see competitive football, but I just don't see it happening.
Okay, but specifically with minicamp, what are you expecting to see then? What are
I'm
you
expecting to see the same exact thing that the gentleman said.
Okay.
I expect to see speed. I expect him to put his stamp on it. If you don't right now, they're going to run over you. You're a college coach right now. You're no longer a college coach. You're an NFL coach. You're a leader of men, not boys, but men. You allow your standards to be met. You want them to do exactly what you want to do and let them run full speed.
Yeah, and it seemed like for a while, I was pretty excited because it seemed like Chip Kelly wasn't going anywhere. And if there's actually a college coach who I did feel threatened by, it was him.
Okay.
So then out of nowhere, it was like, I get a text from my friend, and she's an Eagles fan, and she's like, we got Chip Kelly. I'm like, no.
Good person. Good person.
Yeah, obviously. Go Eagles, she would say. But anyways, so there is some fear, but I think that there's going to be at least a year learning curve with any college coach coming into the pros. But he's had the benefit of seeing where certain guys like Spurrier just down the road have failed.
You guys are killing me with this Washington comparison.
Or Nick Saban in Miami, where some of these guys came in and they thought that they could just live off of their pedigree as college coaches, and guys don't respond to the way they do. I think that he understands that he's coaching grown-ups and not kids that are, straight out of high. I mean, it's a complete different animal.
You threw Nick Saban out there, and that's one of the mysteries of life. Like, why is peanut butter and jelly so good at 1 o'clock in the morning? You know what I mean? Like, why did Nick Saban suck so bad in Miami? And some people say because Drew Brees chose to go to New Orleans and Dante Culpepper wasn't fully healed. To me, I think Nick Saban's game is get as much talent as possible and ride them. And I don't know, I don't follow Alabama enough to say he's a great coach here, but I think where Chip Kelly's going to work. I don't know if you remember Jimmy Johnson. You remember Jimmy Johnson? Because the Redskins were pretty good then. We sucked as always. But, the Redskins were pretty. Jimmy Johnson had that quality where he could talk to anybody and you didn't feel like you had to keep your eyes open and your wallet in your back pocket. You know what I mean? Like, you felt like, okay, I can take this man at his word. Chip Kelly has that feel, and I'm not looking for anything. I'm full disclosure. I'm not looking for anything. I'm looking forward to seeing him get out, but I am looking for something. I'm gonna go completely left. I've been this dude's biggest critic. I want to see number 7 come out and do it just for 5 days or 4 days. I don't know. I want to see Mike Vick look damn good. That's what I want to see.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I do.
Because you're a big hater.
No, I am.
You're a big hater.
No, I love, and I'll say this, I love Michael Vick. As a man, I love Michael Vick. I love the fact that he was, at one point was, he is the only African-American quarterback to go first overall besides Cam Newton, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Who?
Oakland.
Oh, Jamarcus.
Jamarcus Russell.
Well, we
Does he or that franchise?
We all got a Michael Evans in our family. You know what I mean?
But let the fact be said, he was.
But I respect Michael Vick, and when Michael Vick went through his problems, I was one of the stand-up people rooting for Michael Vick. But as a football, just from a football perspective, we're not going to spend a long time on this. But just from a football point of view, he's failed us. And it's time, it's time to move on. But I want to see him. That's what I want to see. I want to see him do something instead of talking in front of a microphone and talk about it. Jimmy Johnson was able to see the star like a star and a role player like a role player. And, and that's the thing I think Chip Kelly's going to be able to do. I hope it works out. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. Come back, we're going to talk some more NFL. We'll come back, I got some more surprise topics for you. .com Sports. All right. You're killing me with the Washington.
You didn't let me get to Nick Saban first. I was pointing
All
out
right.
the two college.
You said 40 minutes? Okay. A little bit. All right, so I got 20. All right. Welcome back to ComSports. Now, I had a whole segment scheduled out. We were going to talk T.O., working out with Tom Brady. Throw that out of here. Vince Young, possibly Rachel, could throw that out of there. Jackie Robinson Day in Major League Baseball. By the time this airs, it'll be a week behind or so. But today is, Monday, Jackie Robinson Day in Major League Baseball. Last Friday, the movie 42 came out. And before I go to anything else, Major League Baseball, it's news, the story broke last week, that they're creating a diversity task force. And they're doing this to see why there's so little African-American players in Major League Baseball. As of opening day, there was 7.7% of black players on an opening day roster. 1975, it was all the way up to 27%. And just as recently as 95, it was at 19%. So I have my opinions of why I think Major League Baseball is not appealing to young African-American men, black men, whatever have you. But I want to give you guys the floor first. And Duck, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to start with you on why you think African-American men and just in general, why that sport has failed to translate.
It's boring. I mean, I think that baseball doesn't reproduce on television.
Okay.
I mean, it's exhausting at times. And as far as just like being a sport that you can just like pick up and play, it really isn't. That's what kind of drove me out of the game at a certain point, was that like I couldn't keep up with some of the other kids and like how much the equipment cost. I mean, and if you look at certain sports, golf, hockey, baseball, you see a lot of white faces in those sports, and they're very, I would say, exclusionary in that way, that you can't just learn how to play without having the benefit of, like whether it's rink time or tee times or and all of the equipment is extremely expensive. Not to say that that's like the only reason, but if you look at baseball, they have all these outreach programs in Latin America. Yeah. And they're not doing the same thing in the States. So you say like a diversity program specifically targeted at one group, and I don't to say exactly why, but I would trace it more than anything else that I said back to it's boring,
Okay, it's an interesting perspective.
And that's not really a white or a black thing. That's just really like I don't know that many people that I'm friends with that want to sit down and watch baseball on television. If you get free tickets, you might go to the game. Show up a little late, leave a little early. But that's my opinion.
Now, Jay, I know you play baseball, so I'm gonna come back to you in a second. Roy.
I have to just kind of dovetail off those same points. There's one. I think one of the main reasons is baseball itself is not doing a good job in the inner city trying to get kids.
They have an RBI program and
baseball in the inner cities program. They aren't doing enough in the city. I don't think. You can just go around. You can just go around the city, and you just see like baseball fields in shambles. I don't think they put enough effort into trying to actually revive baseball or do things or to promote baseball in their city. But the point that the baseball is boring, I think that's a very, very valid point to make. And not only that, baseball is not in the front of everyone's mind as it used to be. Like in the 60s and 70s, there was the game of the week on broadcast television that everybody saw. And so no matter what, every Saturday, that you can turn on the TV and you can watch baseball. You don't see that at all. When you see the game of the week, it's on Sunday night, it's on ESPN, it's on cable television. Meanwhile, you're bombarded with basketball. And you can see basically any football game you want to or broadcast. And you can see there's so many different options for kids to watch now that you're going to have that natural splintering of the audience. That some of the kids who may have migrated towards baseball, they're watching more basketball, they're watching more football, they're more entranced by those sports.
It's interesting. I disagree, but I'm glad I disagree with you as well. I disagree with both of you. I'm going to go ahead and get the floor to you, Jay.
Well, we're in a me society right now, and we're in a microwave society right now.
Okay.
We want things as a society fast, simple. You'll put your work in what you want to put your work in. But with baseball, it's a little bit different than that. Like you said, I played baseball for about 30 years of my life. I haven't played in the past 5 years or so. But my father got me into baseball. His father got him into baseball. I hate to say it, you don't have too many real fathers nowadays who will pass down traditions like this. It's real easy to play basketball by yourself. It's real easy to play two-hand touch. out there in the field with maybe 5 or 6 guys. It's hard to get out there by yourself and go play baseball. There's not too many batting cages around. Like you said, baseball fields are in shambles. And baseball is a family tradition. It's a family game. It's a family sport. Something you can actually afford to take your family out to and spend maybe $80, $70 and get all 4 of you all into a game and actually watch. I agree with what Duck said. It is sometimes a pretty boring sport. When you look at it on TV, you get the pitcher-catcher point of view. When you watch the highlights on ESPN, all the home runs generally look the same unless he's shooting way out. The infield play, I can appreciate an infield turn 2, turn 3, because that's where I cut my teeth at. But when you look at a slam dunk, when you look at an 80-yard touchdown run, when you look at Megatron making a leaping catch and do all the athleticism you can put in there, baseball just doesn't have an exciting venue for young African-American kids.
Okay.
Again, I love the sport. I taught my daughter how to play the sport. I've coached the sport at the high school level. I played at the college level. I played at the military level. I love the sport. But again, I don't reflect all African Americans when looking at the game. I do believe if MLB would take the time to get back into the inner city to help revamp some of these fields, to get into the high schools, to help promote the game, maybe it will prosper. But right now, kids just don't want to play the sport.
Go ahead.
And times just change. You know, at one point in time, the 3 major sports in America were horse racing, boxing, and baseball. Now, horse racing, you have the Triple Crown, maybe a little bit with the Breeders' Cup. With boxing, every now and then you have a big pay-per-view fight. And baseball gets really exciting during the playoffs if the Sox or the Yankees are involved. Then you get the nationwide thing. And with it today, it's the NFL, and everyone is fighting over the leftovers. You know, so that's, I mean, it really is a thing of more, it's just about football, sort of, in my opinion.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to disclose why I feel baseball is failing to reach African-American men. ComSports. Welcome back to ComSports. We were talking about why baseball is failing to reach African-American men, specifically African-American men. I feel like, and I'm going to try to lighten the mood a little bit, but I feel like, to use the old phrase, it's the chickens coming home to roost. You know, I'm going to quote the great philosopher and MC, my man Bavu Blakes, and say, you know, when you ride a donkey into town, that's your ass. And what that means is, when you bring that drama in, that's your drama. When I think of baseball, I think of racism. If I'm a young black man, you said your father taught you how to play the game. Yo, I'm sure your father has some interesting stories about baseball and how it treated African-American men when he was coming up. So he made it a conscious effort to not be deterred. My father said no. You know, they want to treat Dick Allen like that, or they want to treat Jackie Robinson like that. Let's play something else. It's not it's boring, but the financial payoff is fantastic. You got people coming from the South who don't even have shoes, racing through rabbit fields. It's a true story. Racing through rabbit fields to play football where the contracts aren't even guaranteed. But yet baseball is guaranteed for life. I mean, you can have a beer belly and sunglasses on in the field to play. I believe that it's the chickens coming home to roost. I believe that donkey is now rearing its ugly head. And I can go through a litany of examples, but I'm going to point to one specific example that we all can point to currently. Barry Bonds was vilified, was drugged through the mud. One of the old stories I used to hear about, I feel like I say that a lot. One of the old stories I used to hear about is, you know, one of the things that people hate worse than a black person is a person who loves black people. Barry Bonds' best friend set in prison because he did not snitch on him at those trials. Caucasian man. They ran Barry Bonds, took away his records. You know, you had all the people meeting, well, we just don't like him. He just mean to us. That's why we don't want to root for Barry Bonds. But damn if they didn't sit there and fight for Roger Clemens. Damn if they didn't call that train on the ground and say, well, why would you keep a bloody gall? Why would you keep all that stuff? That's crazy. And damned if Roger Clemens didn't get off. And damned if they don't ESPN still don't have Roger Clemens on everything every time they talk about baseball. So just give me a second. That's what I see when I see baseball. You hate Sammy Sosa, but Mark McGwire can sit there and have a street named after him in St. Louis. And the only person to call him on the carpet for that is the black congressman from St. Louis. It's like that's what I see. And I'm going to give you a second, Duck. I'll go ahead and give you a second to comment.
Well, because, and I completely agree with you, because once Barry Bonds' contract was done with San Francisco, he was out.
Exactly.
Everyone in baseball, that was an unspoken collusion type deal where we're done with him. Whereas I've heard rumors that Roger Clemens would be accepted back into Houston if he wanted to potentially play in order to extend the time after his retirement so that he could officially get into the Hall of Fame so he's not lumped in with everyone else.
Mark McGwire's a coach.
He's coaching in St. Louis. So how is it that Roger Clemens has Houston, looking out for him, and yet Barry Bonds, who was still one of the best batters, one of the best hitters in baseball, had everyone turn their backs on him? And I can't see anything other than that.
Well, it's because
the way they look.
You go, and I'm going to transition here. You're going to like this transition. Barry Bonds Jr.'s father is who?
Bobby Bonds.
Bobby Bonds, who has been on record for who's been outspoken about how racist baseball was. 42 comes out, the Jackie Robinson story. Major League Baseball has pushed their best foot forward. We're going to make every Major League team retire Jackie Robinson's number. We're in Philadelphia. One of the teams that are featured in that movie as being one of the racist teams that went after Jackie Robinson, and this is a quote from Jackie Robinson. The only people in the only team was the general manager Chapman, and the Philadelphia Phillies made him want to come out of his shell, made him want to come out of that shell and throw everything away and fight back with the Philadelphia Phillies. It was the only team. Now, I did a little research here because I will never support the Phillies, ever, because of what I know. But I want to talk about this. Major League Baseball is supposedly done, all these things to distance itself from its racist past, and with some facets it has. But when you got that red elephant sitting in the room, that's known racist, one of the most racist organizations in the history of baseball. You can throw the Reds out there, you can throw the St. Louis, you can throw anybody out there. You start to dig a little deeper, and this is where, again, horses coming on, or everything coming on the roost, donkey, every analogy I use. Of the 30 Major League Baseball teams, 9 teams have no African-American players' jersey numbers retired. I said that right. No black players' numbers are retired on these 9 teams. All right, now I'm going to read you the 9 teams. Of the 9 teams, Colorado Rockies, who only have 1 number retired, Jackie Robinson, Arizona, Toronto, Tampa Bay, and the Texas Rangers only have 2 jerseys retired, one of which is Jackie Robinson. So technically you can say they have 1 African-American player's number retired is Jackie Robinson. But let's be realistic here. You're forcing it down their throat. Of the 9 teams, only one team has more than 3 players' jersey numbers retired. Who is that team, Roy?
Philadelphia Phillies.
The Philadelphia Phillies. They have 7 players' numbers retired. Not one is an African American. That is one of the reasons why baseball fails to translate. Your handshake is not matching your smile. We're not buying it. I'd rather go get my head turned off in football, where you'll have a season where you may not get an African-American coach. You'll have that season, but there'll be an outcry and there'll be changes made. You'll have a season in basketball where, you'll vilify LeBron James one season, but next season he's loved. And even when you hate LeBron James, there's another person of color to take his place. You're not trotting out Hispanic players and trying to pass them off as black players. Jimmy Rollins, and I'm going to bring it back to the Phillies, because to me, they're the face of the racism that still exists in baseball. Jimmy Rollins is arguably, before I go to Jimmy Rollins, do you remember Dick Allen? I know you know who Dick Allen is. Remember Dick Allen? Dick Allen is one of the better players of his time. Jersey not retired by the Phillies, and I'll give the Phillies an out here, because he's not in the Hall of Fame. Of the 7 players they have retired, Dick Allen, you can make an argument for Dick Allen, but he's not in the Hall of Fame. The other 7 players in the Hall of Fame. I won't say his number deserves to be retired, but what I will say is this. The man fought for you to refer to, simple request, to refer to as Dick Allen. The Phillies still refer to him as Richie. Major League Baseball refers to him as Dick. Baseball Reference refers to him as Dick. The Philadelphia Phillies will still refer to him as Richie. Again, your handshake is not matching your smile. You're telling me you want me to participate, but in the same token, I see a reflection of a machete behind your back. Now, I'm going to ask you a question because you're more entrenched in the Phillies fan base community. Who do you see as the face of the Philadelphia Phillies?
The face of the Phillies is basically the face that they project out there more than anybody else right now is Chase Utley.
Who's been with the Phillies longer, Chase Utley or Jimmy Rollins? It's about what and what, I would assume, right?
They're pretty similar.
All right.
They both came up in the organization.
Who has had more impact on the franchise, Chase Utley or Jimmy Rollins?
Probably Jimmy Rollins.
I would say Jimmy Rollins because he's number one in about 5 statistical categories.
Chase Utley's the best second baseman they've ever had. I mean, you can make an argument. Jimmy Rollins the best shortstop they've ever had. So, I mean, you know.
So my question is this. They don't promote Jimmy Rollins, or it's a toss-up. Jimmy Rollins, you would say Cole Hamels, I believe you said earlier. Yeah. Cole Hamels. Who would you say would be the face of the Phillies?
I would still say, for an offensive standpoint, Ryan Howard when healthy.
Okay.
Yeah. Or Ryan Howard, too. I mean, I see him on nationwide ads and stuff.
Do you think they've done a good job promoting Jimmy Rollins or Ryan Howard, who I have the utmost respect for both of those players?
No.
Okay. No. Why would you say? I'm going to give you a second, but why would you say that?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. I want to give him an out here. I don't think it's malicious. I don't necessarily think it's.
Oh no, I don't think it's malicious at all. I don't think it's racism. I think it's history.
Yeah. I don't know if it's malicious or not, but I don't think they promoted those guys. I wish I had a reason for you. I don't think they promoted those guys as much as they promoted the Chase Utleys, the Roy Halladay's, the Cole Hamels. But I can't put my finger on the reason why exactly it is.
I just think it's interesting because I wouldn't have said Jimmy Rollins at all. Like, his name wouldn't have come into my mind, and with the Phillies being in the same division as my squad. But here you are saying, like, that's the guy, and it's like he's not even on my radar. And that, I don't know if you could point to baseball or if that's the Phillies, but that's what it is. The why of it really almost doesn't even matter. It just points out that it's true.
And it's the ingredients. No matter which ingredient you put more pepper or more salt, it still comes out the same dish. It's still baseball's failure to promote. And this is the poster child. Jimmy Rollins is not just a good baseball player. He's responsible for turning around a morbid franchise. Him, Chase Utley, they're responsible for. The Phillies were beyond bad. They were Washington Wizards bad. They were Washington Bullets bad. And for them to now be a World Series contender, how much of that can you put at the feet of Jimmy Rollins?
Jimmy Rollins, former MVP Jimmy Rollins. Let's not forget that. I mean, the man has credentials. I mean, the man will go down. The man is arguably a borderline Hall of Famer. I mean, you can't deny that.
But you could even take it another step further and look at the Red Sox, because even though Manny Ramirez was popular, Big Papi's still popular, Curt Schilling and the ketchup, blood-soaked stained sock, that got the most run.
Right.
And Johnny Damon and the idiots and the whole thing, but really, like, it was Manny Ramirez and Big Papi who put them back in the conversation.
And I love the fact that you said that. Another transition before we go to break. I'm going to give you all one nugget to think of. The biggest indictment isn't the fact that Dick Allen isn't in the Hall of Fame or doesn't have a retired number. It's not that they don't promote Jimmy Rollins. It's in that in the 80, 90 years the Phillies have been around, you can't, 100, I wanted to say 100. You haven't found one Hispanic or African American player that's good enough to have his number retired? Come on, man. And in the movie 42, there's one manager who's seen yelling and screaming at Jackie Robinson. He is a manager of the Phillies. So before baseball can tell me that they've changed for the better, and we've hired people to get more blacks involved. First of all, it's like doing that is like saying, I'm not racist, I have black friends. It's not, it doesn't jive. It doesn't jive. You have to make a conscious effort, and it starts at the roots. It starts at you saying, you know what, Phillies, you need to be the first to come out publicly. And I know they're going out in the African American community. I know they've gone out in North Philly and all that fun stuff, and they've done the photo ops and all that great stuff. But at the end of the day, that's not what I'm at. That's not what we're asking for. Randall Cunningham is loved as Randall Cunningham built a gym in a little town called Camden, New Jersey. Gave kids an opportunity to get off the streets and go play baseball, basketball, football, do those things. One of those kids that participated in that little gym is yours truly. Reggie White used to go to North Philly without camera crews and talk to people and teach kids that you can do other stuff. You don't have to be a professional football player. You can do other things. The Phillies don't have that face, and they don't have that effort. They're sending out the same guys who are the grandsons of the guys who told me I wasn't good enough. That's what baseball has to change. Your face has got to change, and your intent has to change. Go ahead, Doug. It looked like you wanted to chime in there.
Oh, no.
Or was it Jay? Did you want to chime in?
I'm in total agreement with you. Like I said, playing baseball coming up, it was pretty much a opposite for me. Playing football, I saw all my friends there. I saw the whole neighborhood there. I had to go out of town to really play baseball. I lived in Washington, D.C. and went out to Fort Washington, Maryland, went out to Southern Maryland to play baseball, where African Americans were accepted, but we weren't really the norm. if you want to get African Americans back in, you have to go out and broadcast the sport out there.
You know, go ahead, Roy. You get the last word.
Especially just with the Phillies. I don't know if you remember this, but I think it was about 20 years ago. I think right before the '93 team, there was a back page story in the Philadelphia Daily News when the Phillies had no black players on the roster at all, which was, back in the '90s was ridiculous because again,
it's not racism. It's history. It's their history.
Exactly, and that's the recent history. And then for you to be at that point, 20 years ago, and not make a conscious effort to kind of go out every year and do whatever you can in the community to promote the game, then that does say something about your philosophy.
They were extraordinary racists in the times, and they need to do extraordinary efforts to make up for that, plain and simple. And when the oldest of the oldest state, you know what, we made a mistake. When the oldest Klansman takes off his hood and makes amends for what he does, then everything else will fall into line. So don't give me a diversity task force. Don't force the Phillies to retire Jackie Robinson. I want it down. I really do. I want it down. And I don't. Jackie Robinson fought for an opportunity. I'm gonna tie it up here because I know my cameraman's ready to go home and eat. Jackie Robinson fought for an opportunity. Jackie Robinson fought for an opportunity. He didn't fight for you to give it to him. He didn't fight for us to have it given to us, for us to earn it. He earned his number to be retired for the Brooklyn Dodgers. He earned that. Players have come through Philadelphia, black players, Dick Allen comes to mind, Kim Batista comes to mind, good players. But the fact that they've never, ever, ever found an African-American worthy enough to have earned a right to have his jersey number retired tells me everything I need to know. So that's it for this week's edition of ComSports. Make sure you join us next week. We're going to have a full NFL. We're going to broadcast actually during the draft, so we'll have some fun tidbits for you there. Make sure you go to the website, .comsports TV, and check out last week's show as well as this week's show. And we'll be here every week for you. As always, I'm your host, Kwame Fisher-Jones, and I appreciate your time of year. You be easy.
So let me hear you say yeah.
No rain, no thunder. Everything's like summer. The storm is over. Today is your day. No pain, no problems. Another day's been offered. Don't have to worry about a thing. Today is your day.
Out of the bed, get the stretching and yawning. Down on my knees, give thanks for the morning. A new day, yesterday's stresses are gonna. I ain't got to deal with drama no longer.